with the mid-season patch just coming early next week, the Barbarians got some massive buffs to their damage. This should make things pretty interesting. The build that I've playing for the last 2 weeks is already doing this. And is already hitting this hard. There are some very specific buffs that are going to affect this build, which may push it to the new meta. We'll have to find out when the patch hits. I'm going to cover all of the updates to the Barbarian that are happening on Tuesday, and then I'll talk about why this particular build is going to be affected by these buffs so much. We're going to start at the top. Let's look at the Shattered Vow. They're changing your 400% damage to healthy enemies, and they're replacing it with 44% damage over time duration. This could affect the aspect here. Enemies affected by more damage over time than their remaining lives are executed. If you extend the duration of our bleeds, then we will exceed that life a lot faster. So hopefully this will creep its way into a couple more builds now. Moving down, we're going to go into the aspects. Bold Chieftain currently reduces your cooldown of your shouts by up to 50%, and that is based on the amount of enemies around you. They're increasing that to 70% damage reduction. That's a big change. Adaptability. Right now, it is split between 2 different effects, above 50% maximum resource and below. They're making it so that we now get both of those effects all the time for basic skills. This will be a huge boost to builds like Bash or Frenzy or anything that is going to involve using a basic skill. Now, going down into some of the skills, some of these skills got some huge buffs, and it's skills that are actually very widely used. Ground Stomp is being increased from 35% damage to 80%, is more than doubling. Strategic Ground Stomp, ultimate cooldown reduction is increased from 4 to 5 seconds, up to an increased maximum amount of 15 seconds off of your ultimate. Right now, in one of the builds I'm running, I have 15-second cooldown on my ultimate skill. This would make it come up instantly. Hammer of the Ancients is being increased from 55% damage to 70% damage. Upheaval is going from 100 to 120%, and then the lucky hit chance is being increased to 30%. Enhanced Upheaval, the stun chance is increased by 10% up to 45%. Furious Upheaval, damage bonus stacks are being increased to 10, and then damage per stack is being increased to 20%. Double Swing is getting a very small buff. It's only getting a 10%, going from 50% damage to 60% damage. Rend is more than doubling the damage. Bleeding damage is also being increased. So maybe if we pair Rend with the Shattered Vows now, we're going to see some new builds coming out that are going to have bleed involved. The leap damage change is very minor, and nobody really uses leap for damage. They use leap to proc either earthquakes or to generate fury or to proc some dust devils, but it's a small change. Kick. This is a big one. Last season, the kick build was super fun to play. It was kind of lackluster this season. We're getting more than 3 times increase on the damage, so maybe this is going to be a very viable endgame build. Iron Skin, everybody's favorite defensive ability. The cooldown reduction is being reduced to 12 seconds. Enhanced Iron Skin. It used to absorb 25% of your maximum life as a barrier. Now, when you use it, Iron Skin grants Unhindered, which means that if there is a pack of enemies standing in front of you, you can run straight through them without being stopped or without having to go around them. You gain that for 5 seconds. And the barrier is now going to absorb 30% more of your maximum life. That's a big boost. Tactical Iron Skin. The healing per second based on the barrier is increased from 10 to 20%. And then Strategic Iron Skin. Fortify amount is increased from 20 to 30% of your maximum life. Death Blow. This was a favorite last season. Death Blow damage is being increased from 120 to 140%. On top of that, it is also going from 150 to 200% increased damage against bosses. I'm going to have a Death Blow build done tonight, so stop by the stream or look on my YouTube page for the update. It'll be on there. We'll have the planner ready. I absolutely love Death Blow builds, and this one hits real hard. Trust me on this one. Rupture damage is getting doubled from 13 to 25%. Enhanced Rupture. the damage bonus per strength is being increased from 20 to 35%. Steel Grasp damage. Steel Grasp is also a utility skill, so this one really, the damage is just kind of there, so it's a small boost to the damage. This is a big one, Mighty Throw. Now, Mighty Throw, this change is to compensate for a bug fix related to the Tempering Affix that gives a chance to deal double damage. They're buffing the damage that Mighty Throw is doing because there was a bug with the Tempering Affix with it. So what Mighty Throw does, and what the change is that base damage is being increased from 80% to 120%, and then the pulse damage is being increased from 35% to 55%. We'll see how this affects the Mighty Throw builds. Mighty Throw build is currently the strongest in the game right now. There's a couple snapshots that make Mighty Throw do some massive amounts of damage. So we'll see if this affects it at all, or if it increases it. This might make you clear even maybe close into the 130s. That would be pretty crazy with a Barbarian. The passive changes that we're getting, this one's a good change. Heavy-handed, the critical strike damage bonus is being increased from 5, 10, 15 to 6, 12, 18. Pit Fighter, they're changing the damage reduction from distant enemies to just straight damage reduction. I like that change. No Mercy. This one now actually may end up being used. We pretty much never use this because it was so conditional, but they're taking away the damage on Tuesdays, and they're just making it 3, 6, 9 critical strike chance. A couple of the unique items that they are making changes to, we're going to cover the ones that are really only used right now. The Ring of Red Fury, the critical strike damage bonus that it has right now is 30 to 60%. That is going from 50 to 80% increased damage. That's a big one. The Overkill is going from 40 to 60% to 60 to 80%. That is where you get all of the AoE damage in Deathblow. That is where you get all of the AoE damage with the Deathblow build. So this is a really cool change here. Couple more aspects that are being changed. Now this one is a big one here. The Battle Mat aspect. I actually did use this at one point last season when I was trying to figure out how to get myself berserking. Now, what it used to do is you gain berserking for 4 seconds after you swapped weapon 8 times. That was the only thing it gave you. They are changing it and they are buffing it to an enormous amount. You now gain 20 to 40% increased damage and berserking for 4 seconds after swapping weapons 8 times. With the build that I'm running, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth, that will be up 100% of the time. Aspect of Sundered Ground. This is for upheaval. The bonus is getting increased from 30 to 50% to 50 to 70%. So it currently does every 20 seconds. Your next upheaval cast is guaranteed to overpower, and it's going to deal now 50 to 70% increased damage. Maybe upheaval will make its way into the mainstream finally. We'll see. A couple really big Paragon changes. The Blood Rage node in the Paragon board. Currently, you're getting 10% of your damage while berserking bonus, but that only goes up to a maximum of 30%, and that is a multiplicative number based around your damage while berserking. The more damage while berserking you had, the more that you get a multiplier out of that. Now it's going from 30 to 45%. Last season, when we were testing Deathblow, we had the Deathblow build set up with only about 20% increased damage while berserking bonus from the Blood Rage node. When we bumped it up from 20 to 30, we noticed a really significant damage increase. Now we're going to go from 30 to 45%. This should be a pretty big buff, hopefully. We'll see. The Decimator node. Right now, each time you make an enemy vulnerable, your damage is going to be increased by 10%. That's just all damage. If you overpower on a vulnerable enemy, you get an additional 10% bonus. Those are both being doubled. So instead of giving us 20% increased damage bonus, we're getting a 40% increased damage bonus. This is going to be a really, really big boost to both of these nodes, and they're already staples in your Paragon board. You really can't go without these. So now we're going to get even more out of them. So let's talk about the build that I'm running right now. I'm currently running a Whirlwind Hammer of the Ancients build. This is a throwback to Season 2 for anybody that has been here, that played AOZ. It was one of my absolute all-time favorite builds for Barbarians. We did not have Tempers, we didn't have Masterworking, we didn't have any of that in Season 2 or Season 3. I wanted to see if we could get it to work with the new chance to deal double damage with Hammer of the Ancients that we can get on our Tempers now. We got that to 100%. We started working on it, and now we are hitting for billions of damage, as you saw. How this is going to be affected specifically by these buffs. You saw that Hammer of the Ancients is now being increased from 55% to 70%. So now we've already just a base damage increase for Hammer of the Ancients. That's going to be awesome. We are a weapon swap build. We are already using an aspect that when we swap 8 times, we're going to overpower. So swapping 8 times is incredibly important. We're running a node in our Paragon board where we have to swap weapons in order to generate Fury. Everything in this build is based around swapping. We are running Hammer, and then we're running Dual Wield for Whirlwind. Whenever we use Whirlwind and then we switch to Hammer of the Ancients, which we do back and forth, you alternate back and forth, we're swapping weapons. The time that it takes us to swap 8 times is very, very small. The aspect change that they're doing is going to be every time that we swap 8 weapons, we're going to be getting 40x increased damage at the maximum of the aspect and berserking. There is a very small bit of downtime that I have with Warcry. This only gives you 4 seconds of berserking. So for 3.3 seconds, I am not with berserking and I'm missing 25% increased damage. Now we'll have that up all the time, plus an additional 40x multiplier. And depending on how this build works, we're going to do some testing. But if we end up putting that on a 2-handed weapon, that's 80x increased damage. You add a pole arms in, that's another 15x increased damage. We could be stacking some really big numbers. We're going to test it out. But that in conjunction with the Blood Rage node aspect change and the Decimator aspect change, I'm hoping to see some really, really significant increases in our pit clear times and our pit ladder climbing. If you're interested in this build, I put a planner together and I have a build guide video for it. It's going to be in the description of this video, so make sure you check it out. That's all I got for the Barbarian updates. I hope that you are excited as I am. I'm live every night. Stop by, theorycraft with me, say hi, catch you on the clip side.